January 2nd, 1942, Manila falls.
Manila lasts 26 days. Japan's endless blow of invasion forces doomed Manila.
It is considered one of the worst defeats for the U.S. military. In the weeks after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, Japan's blitz on Southeast Asia continued with the invasion of the Philippines. After a months-long siege, American forces surrendered. General Douglas MacArthur's American Supreme Military Commander in the Pacific evacuated to Australia and famously vowed to return. He left General Jonathan Wainwright to command American and Filipino forces in the face of overwhelming odds. Now the story of these two American heroes is the subject of a new book. David Martin sat down with the author of The Fate of the Generals.
American troops waged the final battle to liberate Manila from the Japanese. The conquering hero, General Douglas MacArthur, makes good on his famous vow, "I shall return," to the Philippines. But there was another hero of the Philippines, a general named Jonathan Wainwright, who made a different vow.
And that vow was that he would stay and share the fate of his men, even when it meant becoming the highest-ranking American prisoner of war of World War II.
Jonathan Horn tells the story in The Fate of the Generals, the first biography of Wainwright based on his personal diary.
We have part of Wainwright's diary here.
It survived 3 years in Japanese prison camps and came to rest at the Army's Heritage Center in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So this is an incredible historical document.
And the very first page of this diary is the most important page because it really decides the rest of the story.
A story that begins in the opening months of World War II, with the Japanese closing in on his headquarters on the island of Corregidor in Manila Bay. Wainwright pledged that he
will, if necessary, surrender myself with my troops. No other course of action would be honorable.
Wainwright had been left in command after the larger-than-life MacArthur was ordered to escape from the Philippines to Australia.
MacArthur is not just a man, he's a symbol. He is America's most famous general, and he's seen as too important to become a prisoner.
MacArthur arrived in Australia to great fanfare, while Wainwright was left to make a final stand against the Japanese on Corregidor. How does it end on Corregidor?
There's going to be a massacre of 12,000 to 13,000 lives. And so he makes this choice that it's time to raise the white flag over Corregidor.
Does he literally raise a white flag?
There literally is. They take the American flag down and they raise a white flag over Corregidor.
Wainwright sent this final cable to President Franklin D. Roosevelt.
With broken heart and head bowed in sadness, but not in shame, I report to Your Excellency that I must arrange terms for the surrender of the fortified islands of Manila Bay.
Roosevelt responded with a message Wainwright copied word for word into his diary. Personal from the President to Lieutenant General Wainwright.
We have been following with growing admiration the day-by-day accounts of your heroic stand. The American people ask no finer example of tenacity, resourcefulness, and steadfast courage.
Wainwright wasted away in Japanese prisons, at one point down to 125 pounds, not knowing if he was a hero for sticking with his troops or a disgrace for surrendering.
He is isolated from the outside world. He's not getting mail. It'll take 2 years before he receives a handwritten letter from his wife. And, I think that was the worst form of torture in some ways, because it left him to wonder, what did people in the outside world think of him? And he begins to think the worst, that they are going to hate him for having made this decision for the sake of his men.
What's the state of his health?
He doesn't think he can survive much longer, but he makes this entry in his diary, and I think it's the most moving entry in his diary. I will make a fight for life as I fought against overwhelming odds in the Philippine Islands. No one called me yellow then, and by God, I won't be now.
When the war suddenly ended with the thunderclap of the atom bomb, Wainwright was reunited with his former commanding general, a moment which left them both virtually speechless.
Finally, MacArthur says, "Well, it's good to see you." And then Wainwright pauses and finally says, "It's good to see you too."
MacArthur at a loss for words?
MacArthur at a loss for words. It doesn't happen very often, but it did happen here.
A better world shall emerge out of the blood and carnage of the past.
MacArthur regained the power of speech in time to accept the Japanese surrender aboard the battleship Missouri, with Wainwright standing at attention behind him.
To General Jonathan Wainwright goes the first bet.
Wainwright came home a hero, a motorcade across the Potomac, and a speech at the Washington Monument.
There's one last stop he has to make, which is at the White House for a meeting with President Truman.
The president walked him out to meet reporters, and Wainwright thought he might have to give another speech.
But it's Harry Truman who will give a speech, and that speech is presenting Wainwright with the Medal of Honor. And Wainwright knows it as soon as he hears those, what he calls those magical words, above and beyond the call of duty.
For CBS Saturday Morning, David Martin in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Oh, a touching tribute to a man that many people, I would say, did not know about.
That's what I was just thinking. This is why I love some of the books out there where you're able to discover something in a side that no one is aware of.
Absolutely. That's why we do what we do.